I'm David, a contract employee at a confectionery manufacturer. I joined this company right after graduating from high school. When I started, I worked in logistics at a factory near the headquarters, but now I'm handling orders and purchases at the main office. I prefer this clerical work over physical labor. It's been 10 years since I joined, and I think I've gotten quite used to the job. Recently, Hannah started getting involved in the business. She's 4 years younger than me and is referred to as the boss daughter behind her back rather than by her real name. Frankly, she's not good at her job. She's slow and even slacks off. However, Mr. Johnson, the boss, is lenient with his daughter and doesn't reprimand her despite seeing this. My colleagues are also fed up with her. Man, Hannah was just on her cell phone all day today, just texting and slacking off. Due to her status, the other employees couldn't say anything to her. One day, during such a routine, following an organizational change, there was a seat rearrangement, and Hannah started working next to me. Mr. Johnson told me, if my daughter has any trouble, please help her out. Since then, I've been taking care of my own work and looking after her as well. She's always on her cell phone during work and sometimes leaves her tasks midway to take a break. Watching this every day was frustrating for me. Hey, could you check these documents too? She glanced at me briefly from her cell phone and said, I'll do it later, before returning her gaze to her cell phone. In the end, she left saying she'd check the documents tomorrow and went home on time. Every day was like this. Because of her, I often had to work overtime. Seriously, I should have just done it myself from the beginning. I grumbled to myself in the empty office. The future looked bleak. A few weeks later, my anger finally erupted. While I was teaching her, she kept glancing at her cell phone, so I blurted out, "Don't take your job so lightly." She paused for a moment with an annoyed look, but I continued, "If you are going to work half-heartedly, it might be better if you quit. To be honest, you're a hindrance right now." "What's with that attitude?" she retorted, her eyes red, and she stormed off. Watching her leave, I immediately regretted speaking so harshly. The next day, she came to work with swollen eyes. She had obviously cried. It was my fault. As I was about to apologize, she said, "I'm sorry." I hadn't expected that. Seeing her like that, I felt bad for being harsh with my words. "I'm sorry for being too harsh. Let's both do our best starting today," I said, and Hannah smiled brightly. From that day on, she seemed like a changed person, engaging in her work and actively progressing tasks. "I'll do that," she offered. "We need to make quite a lot of copies, though." "That's fine. I'll do it." She willingly took on even the tedious tasks. Of course, there was no longer a cell phone on her desk. My colleagues were also surprised by her transformation. It was some time later when I overheard a rumor. I heard that Hannah was going to marry the son of a business partner. I thought, oh, is that so? But didn't pay much attention to it. After a while, Hannah rarely showed up at work. I assumed she was busy with wedding preparations or something, as she had applied for leave, so I just focused on my own tasks without much concern. But then, the problem happened suddenly. While I was working at my desk, Mr. Johnson tapped me on the shoulder. "Can you come to my office right away?" Yes, okay." I wondered what Mr. Johnson himself wanted to talk about. His face was expressionless. I had a bad feeling. I hurried to Mr. Johnson's office, sweating nervously, and knocked on the door. "Come in." As I slowly opened the door, there sat Mr. Johnson with a stern face. Stunned, I heard Mr. Johnson say, "You really harassed my daughter, didn't you?" I was confused. "I'm sorry, but what are you talking about?" According to Mr. Johnson, I had made her suddenly do a large amount of copying during work as a form of harassment. He said that because of this, she recently became afraid to come to the company and couldn't show her face. It seemed Hannah had taken my scolding more seriously than I thought. So that's what it was. I felt betrayed. The copying was a task she volunteered for herself. I didn't request it to her. I tried to explain the truth to Mr. Johnson, but he wouldn't listen. Eventually, I was demoted to a factory in the countryside. Angry and misunderstood, I thought about quitting the job, but with no special skills and unsure about finding another job quickly, I ended up heading to the new location 2 weeks later. At the new factory I was transferred to, I ended up being assigned a wide range of tasks, from production work to administrative duties. It's significantly harder than when I was at the headquarters. However, there was a silver lining. The factory had many older women who were all friendly and made the job much easier. In particular, I got along well with Mary, a lady in her 50s who worked part-time. Mary appeared to be quite a veteran part-time employee, very knowledgeable about the company. She seemed to be aware of not only the factory's workings but also those of the headquarters. Tired, hut here, this is juice I made from oranges grown in my garden, and I also made some cheesecakes. Please have some. Mary always brought me drinks and snacks when I was working overtime. Well, that looks delicious. I'd like some too. Other part-timers, hungry from overtime, also gathered around. Not to be rude, but Mary was like a mother to everyone. Her calm and kind demeanor made her popular among other employees, and she even advised the younger temps on life matters. "Mary, I'm thinking about getting married. Can we talk for a bit?" Of course. So, who is she? Thanks to her, the factory had a very homely atmosphere. I was living a fulfilling, though challenging, life. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. Hannah, of all people, came to the factory. As soon as she saw me, she apologized, saying, "I'm really sorry." Her sudden appearance and immediate apology left everyone around us in a daze. It seemed like the factory workers didn't know she was Hannah. Confused, I just stared at her. Then Mary appeared behind me. Seeing Hannah, Mary seemed surprised and whispered, "Lucy." Then, like a mother, she stroked her head and said, "You've grown up so much." Had she worked at this factory before? Then, somewhat shyly, Hannah said, "It's been a long time, Mom." I was stunned, hearing that word. The employees around us were also shocked by her calling Mary Mom. We decided to talk in a separate room. Hannah, with tears in her eyes, kept apologizing, saying, "I'm really sorry for the trouble I caused." Then Mary asked her, "What's going on? What happened?" Hannah began to explain bit by bit. She didn't hold a grudge for being scolded by me. In fact, she was grateful for the strict guidance. I had a sick rabbit at home, so I installed a camera in my room to watch it constantly. I was so worried that I kept looking at it even at work, and if anything seemed wrong, I'd immediately text the vet. That's why I couldn't focus on work. After being scolded, I realized I couldn't keep this up while everyone else was working hard, so I left my rabbit with the vet. That's what it was all about. Finally, I understood why she was always looking at her cell phone. Then, I told my dad that being scolded at work was a wake-up call for me, but somehow he misunderstood and thought I was harassed by being made to do lots of copying. Once he gets something in his head, he won't listen to anyone. And she came to apologize because she was shocked to find out I had been transferred to the factory after she took a leave to care for her rabbit's surgery. That's when Mary spoke up as if she had realized something. "I see. It looks like I'll have to talk to him myself," she murmured. It turned out, Mary and Mr. Johnson were once married. However, they had divorced about 10 years ago. Mary originally worked at the headquarters but moved to this factory after their divorce. Mary quickly contacted Mr. Johnson, and the next day he showed up at the factory. Looking awkward, he greeted Mary with a long time, "No see." Mary retorted, "You told me to leave the company and our daughter to you, but was it a mistake to trust you?" Mr. Johnson visibly shrank. It was my first time seeing him like this. Watching him, Mary said with exasperation, "You're still so stubborn and set in your ways." I then learned another shocking fact. Our company was originally managed by Mary as an executive. I joined after she had left her position, so I had no idea. Mary sighed, "You don't listen to your daughter or your employees. You can't run a company like that. You've always been like this, not listening to others." Mr. Johnson muttered, "Quiet down," unable to argue back. Finally, Mary asked, "If you plan to keep doing as you please, should I take over the company and Lucy, what will you do?" Mr. Johnson tearfully pleaded, "No, I'll do it." Hannah, who had been silent until then, took her father's hand and said, "Dad, I know you care about me. You were always kind and bought me everything. Of course, I love you, but..." Then she looked down, blushing slightly, and said, "I just want to marry someone I love," looking into Mr. Johnson's eyes and then, for some reason, glancing at me. Mary again stroked her head. Mr. Johnson looked down and murmured, "Understood." The discussion concluded for the time being, and the next day, work at the factory resumed. I thought I would continue working at the factory, but a week later, I was ordered to return to the headquarters. It was quite sudden and busy, but I was happy to return, as I preferred working at the headquarters. Right after returning, she invited me to a coffee shop during lunch break. As soon as we sat down, she said, "I'm truly sorry for what happened." To her, I said, "You don't have to apologize so many times. Let's look forward to working together again." She insisted on treating me as an apology and paid the bill. As I thanked her and began to walk away, I said, "Thank you for the meal." That's when she pulled my hand and said, "Wait." Confused, I stopped, and she blushed, saying, I like you. I have feelings for you," while looking down. On what? I was flustered by her sudden confession, to which she continued, "I have a request. Would you go out with me? I refused the marriage because I fell for you. Is that okay?" pleading earnestly. Honestly, at that time, I didn't have romantic feelings for her, so we decided to start as friends. However, it didn't take long for us to grow close, and I quickly became attracted to her childlike charm and innocence. Soon, I confessed my feelings, and we started dating. About a month after dating Lucy, I was called to Mr. Johnson's office again. As I entered, he said, "I hear you're dating my daughter," and I nervously wondered what I would be reprimanded for this time. Mr. Johnson said, "I want you to work harder because I'm entrusting my daughter to you." He continued, "If you're willing, would you become a full-time employee? You're well regarded by other employees in the HR department, and I would like you to help with management in the future." "Yes, thank you," I replied, feeling like I was in a dream. Since then, I've been working even harder as a full-time employee, continuing my smooth relationship with Lucy and regularly updating Mary. Mary, preferring the factory environment, continued working there as a part-timer. A lot happened in a short time, but now I'm very happy. I look forward to living fulfilling days, both in my work and personal life. Get out of here. You're out of your league with that low education, don't you get it? There's no way someone as incompetent as you should be at such a prestigious party. My boss John looked down on me with utter contempt, smirking triumphantly. His face was so hideously smug that it left me in disgust. "Understood. I'll leave, just as you say." John's laughter echoed throughout the venue. With the laughter that sounded almost like screams behind me, I left the venue. I'm George, a 41-year-old office worker. I have a sister who's 5 years older than me. Our parents passed away in a car accident when I was in high school. Therefore, I've always looked up to my sister, who raised me in their stead. My older sister Emily is a strong woman. She always pulled me along, especially when I was a tearful kid. She would appear out of nowhere to rescue me from bullies, driving them away. Even when our parents were alive, Emily's training methods for me were intense. In our neighborhood, she was known as a reincarnation of a famous historical figure. You appear quiet, so you need to be strong to not get pushed around, she would say. With that, she enrolled me in a wrestling club and trained me daily. I was rigorously trained by my sister, who was like a taskmaster, to the point of feeling nauseous. Because my sister was also in a sports club, she was like a demon when it came to coaching. Thanks to that physical training, I was no longer a target for bullies. This didn't change even after our parents died. Mom and Dad are gone, but we need to be strong. Now, intelligence is also important. Furthermore, my sister would daily insist on studying, and if I looked like I was about to fall asleep, she would nudge my head and scold me. Constantly under pressure, my grades, which were once failing, started improving. I believe it's thanks to my sister that I've been able to lead a stable life. Although I never quite managed to overcome my somewhat timid nature. Rough and rowdy as she might seem, Emily always put me first. She'd give me the best part of our treats, like the part of a snack with more filling, and would make me a late-night snack when I was up studying. It was a subtle kindness, but I greatly respected her for it. Because of her, I managed to get a job at my current company. Work was tough, but nothing compared to my sister's training. Working hard at the company, I achieved a respectable position. And it was my childhood friend Jessica, who always supported me. You really stick with me despite my timidity, I'd say. You're not timid, you're kind, George. Avoiding conflicts and seeking peaceful resolutions is hard. That's where I've always liked you. In that way, Jessica always supported me. She was always there, unable to leave me alone, and now she's my wife, by my side. When we decided to marry, Emily asked, "Are you sure about my scatterbrained brother?" But when alone with Jessica, she'd say with tears in her eyes, "A sister always worries about her brother. Please, take good care of George." When Jessica got pregnant, Emily sent us health products and quit smoking, a habit she loved, for the baby's sake. I still feel cherished by my sister. Now, she's a great aunt to my daughter. We named the baby Sarah, and she's growing up well. She's honest and loves to study. She took college entrance exams because she really wanted to pursue a specific field of study, but due to a high number of applicants, she didn't get into her desired college and is currently taking a gap year. When Sarah didn't pass the exam, she cried but quickly shifted her focus to reapplying. She said she'd work part-time to earn money for her gap year, but moved by her resilience, we decided to financially support her during this time. "Thank you, Mom and Dad," Sarah said with tears, grateful as she dedicated herself to studying. We occasionally have her join in on family events at work, hoping it helps relieve her stress. "Don't overdo it, you'll wear yourself out." "I'll be fine, Dad." A few hours after such conversations, I smile with my wife, Jessica, as we cover a studying Sarah with a blanket. I've built such a happy family, and am satisfied with my life. The company I work for is a great place. "George, thank you. Your clear instructions make our work easier," my colleagues say. It's nice to hear that. There's a friendly atmosphere in the office, with everyone helping and supporting each other. Whenever I had free time, I actively offered my help around. I found joy in helping my juniors grow. "Hey, you incompetent, think you're in a position to talk like that?" John's arrival instantly sours the previously comforting environment. John was headhunted from his previous company and became our boss. He's particularly fixated on academic credentials. Being about 10 years younger than me and already in a position of authority, his pride seems immense. Everyone listening to this lowly educated man will only make you dumber. You know, I graduated from an elite university. John seemed quite proud of his educational background, bringing it up at every opportunity. He would go on and on about how hard he worked for his exams and the wonderful lectures he attended in college, stories from over 10 years ago. He even asks each junior about their educational background. "Hey, where did you go to college?" He would interrogate the juniors about their educational background and alma maters, and if he found his to be superior, he would snicker condescendingly. If he considered theirs to be slightly prestigious, he would become irritated and even inquire about their high schools. What a waste, coming from such a good high school and ending up like this. Your parents must be so disappointed. He seems unable to rest without belittling something. I've always felt that actual work performance is more important than educational background. If he has time to brag about his education and mock others, he should focus on improving his work performance. After boasting, he'd just play on his phone, which was exasperating. However, since I'm his main target, I knew he wouldn't consider my opinions. "Hey, which university did you attend?" Tired of his pestering, I tried to evade the question, but he persisted. "Harvard University, Yale University, no. Some other national or private university, no. Could it be you're a vocational school graduate?" His attitude was increasingly irksome. "No. Can you please focus on work instead?" Just as I was about to continue, John burst out laughing. "So, you're a high school graduate. No wonder you can say it out loud. High school graduates aren't really decent people, are they?" John burst into a fit of laughter, calling it a masterpiece. After labeling me a high school graduate, he ridiculed me fully. Even with his previously haughty attitude, he used to call me by my name. "Hey, incompetent." After that conversation, he started referring to me as incompetent. Well, that was still bearable. Since the persistent annoyance towards the juniors was now focused on me, I thought it was better for me to take it quietly to protect them. But then it started affecting the work. "Hey, incompetent, take care of this task." Isn't this your assignment, John? And isn't the deadline tomorrow?" An almost untouched project with a looming deadline was passed on to me. Despite always being on his computer, I wondered what he had actually been doing. "You're incompetent, so having this much work should light a fire under you, right? Wait, this means overtime." Of course, it's overtime. Consider this a drill, a growth opportunity. Be grateful to a senior who's giving you a chance. With that, John left early for a night out, leaving the task to me. It was a crucial project from a client whose trust was vital. If not completed by the deadline, it would harm our company's reputation. But the workload was too much for one person. "There's no need for such harsh words. Don't worry, George, we'll help you." "Don't worry, I live alone. It's fine if I stay up all night." At that time, my juniors, having overheard the conversation, offered their help. I was truly grateful. I informed my wife, Jessica, that I'd be pulling an all-nighter, and somehow we managed to finish the project. I felt sorry for my juniors, all of them sporting dark circles under their eyes. That's when John showed up, not to appreciate our efforts, but to yell at us. "Hey, what are you doing with those foolish faces? You finished the work, right?" I was too tired to be angry, and all the credit for our hard work was taken by John. Naturally, the atmosphere in the department turned tense and uncomfortable. Feeling helpless, I let out a sigh. No matter how hard I worked, only John received praise from the clients. It seemed my exhaustion was also reaching my wife. Are you okay? You've been looking pale lately. Do I look that way? Yes, you didn't come home last night, and Sarah was feeling lonely. I see. Something's bothering you. Would you like to talk about it? Weary, I ended up venting to Jessica. Actually, there's this troublesome guy who's become our boss. He's been piling work on me, but thanks to the juniors, we managed. That sounds tough. Tell me more about it. I took advantage of Jessica's kindness and talked more about John. How dare he? That's unacceptable. Jessica was angry on my behalf. I found solace in her. From time to time, I would vent to her about the days of being bullied by John. But considering my juniors, I knew I had to do something soon. The day my patience ran out finally came. John nudged me with his elbow and started talking to me. Hey, incompetent. You have a daughter, right? A daughter? Don't play dumb. It's about your daughter who's taking a gap year. How does he know about my daughter? I remembered that he probably saw her at the company-wide barbecue we had. Despite a bad feeling, I asked John, "What about my daughter? That girl, failing to get into college, is just as incompetent as you." "So, what about it?" "Humph, well, she's not bad looking. Consider yourself lucky. I'll take her as my wife. She can do household chores and cleaning, right?" "What?" I was in shock as if struck by lightning. "Daughters of incompetence like you don't have many suitors. So, this weekend, host a dinner for me and introduce her. Who knows, with the right approach, she might become a good woman." In other words, John was targeting my daughter. There was no way I could allow that. Anger made my fists tremble. "If you hand over your daughter, I might talk to my uncle about promoting you. For someone like you, promotion is an honor you've never dreamed of." "There's no way that's possible," I argued back, forgetting all formalities. Who would hand over their daughter to a man nearly 20 years older? John seemed surprised that I resisted. "Incompetent, and yet you dare defy me. Brave of you." His face turned into a demonic scowl, and he walked away. His hostility towards me intensified after this incident. Jessica, more worried about my increasing workload and worsening complexion, tried to get me to talk, but I couldn't. The thought of our daughter being targeted by an older man would hurt both Jessica and Sarah. I couldn't bear the feeling of my own inadequacy. "George, join me for a drink. It's been a while." "Emily." One day at work, my sister called out to me. My sister and I worked at the same company. Though we were in different departments and positions, occasionally, she would drag me to a drink. Jessica told me a lot. Don't make them worried. Emily saw right through me. Jessica, who admired my sister, often hung out with her. They shared stories about me, even embarrassing ones from when I was a baby. Still, I was glad they got along well. "Well, Jessica told you all that." "Yeah, there's a bad apple at work, isn't there?" My sister pressed me why I hadn't confided in her sooner. Talking to Jessica made things easier. "I know you're worried, but..." "Really? Well, we'll get back to that. You're still hiding something, aren't you?" I flinched. I could never keep secrets from my sister. She always saw through my attempts and forcefully made me spill the beans. But this time was different. I couldn't bring myself to speak about John targeting my daughter. As I hesitated, my sister put me in a headlock. Despite her age, she's still as strong as ever. "Ouch, ouch, let go. Just talk, will you? You always overthink and make things more complicated. Speak up now or it'll get worse." I gave in and told her about Sarah being targeted. "Is that so? Well, all right, leave it to me." My sister had a look on her face I had never seen before, truly fitting for a demon. Rumor has it that John is a notorious playboy in the nightlife scene. How could I ever give my precious daughter to such a vile man? I reaffirmed my resolve to stand against him. Hey. What is it? You know, you can still change your mind. John approached me again, smirking meaningfully. As I've said many times, I refuse. Is he that desperate for my daughter? Then, can't be helped. Maybe I should take your wife instead. What? Your wife would prefer an elite on the fast track like me over a futureless high school grad like you. How far will John go to mock me? Please stop the insults. You say something. Incompetent words don't reach my ears. Once I get your wife, maybe your daughter too. Hee. Seeing his vile, contemptuous face, I was overwhelmed with anger. Without thinking, I grabbed John. Don't you dare insult my family anymore. A junior who happened to pass by held me back. What, you low-educated incompetent, defying a high-educated superior? Remember this, you no longer have a place here. John left with those parting words. George, I understand how you feel. I would feel the same if someone said that to me, but he's not worth your trouble. I was admonished by the junior and regretted my impulsive actions. After that, I endured days of John's intensified harassment and nastiness. A few days later, we received news that the current president of the company was retiring and a new president would be appointed. A party was to be held for the inauguration. I'm attending the party too. Got my invitation first, me. John was unusually talkative. The new president's name was to be revealed at the party as a surprise. With my education, I'm sure to be a favorite of the new president. Once I'm in his good graces, some incompetent will be fired for sure. Poor thing, over 40 years old. John sat back in his chair, pleased with himself. Technically, all employees were invited, but I kept quiet to avoid further comments. John spoke to me. Oh, right. You better come to the event. Yes, I understand. His response was a smirk. He was definitely plotting something. On the day of the party, I had to arrive at the venue early due to some circumstances. What? No seat? I tried to confirm my seat with the hotel staff, but the response was there isn't one. As I expressed my confusion aloud, I heard laughter from behind. It was John. What a stupid look. He pointed and laughed at me. You don't have a seat. Why not? I took care of your seat. It's inappropriate for a low-educated person to be here. It's only a matter of time before you lose your real seat in the company. Such childish behavior is unimaginable for an adult in a professional setting. Was he really this thoughtless? I was shaken by John's childishness. No, I've been invited too. That's what I'm saying. There's no seat for an incompetent. Don't dirty the celebration of the new president. I frowned at John's vulgar language even in such a formal setting. Unless you're finally willing to introduce your daughter to me, I might consider it. I thought, really, but after seeing the person behind John, I decided to comply with his words. I refuse about my daughter. I'll be leaving then. What? John looked surprised at my straightforward retreat. However, his expression quickly turned triumphant. Staying any longer wouldn't change John's mind. Tired of it all, I relaxed with a coffee in my room. But it was just a little longer to endure. Right, about now, clueless John will be getting his comeuppance. As I leisurely sipped my coffee, I received a call from John on my phone. I smiled and answered the call. John's panicked voice came through. Hey, what's this about? Come back here. What are you doing? His voice, filled with panic and the angry shouts leaking from the speaker, made me laugh. You didn't expect me to be the new president announced today, did you? Yes, the new president to be introduced at the party was me. The person who was watching me from behind John was my sister. John must not have noticed her at the time. Unfortunately for you, I am the new president who was to be announced at today's party. Actually, the company was founded jointly by my sister and her husband. My sister, having studied business management with a college friend who is now her husband, teamed up to start the business. The company grew rapidly under my assertive sister and my brother-in-law, who was a genius at administrative work. After the company was on track, my sister supported him from behind the scenes. He was always kind to me, and I aspired to be like him. My sister always laughs it off when talking to me, but I can tell by looking into her eyes. She is truly in love with her husband. Admiring my sibling couple, I wanted to help and join the company. No special treatment because we're family. My sister didn't favor me, so I had to join purely on my own merits. I didn't want to be promoted easily because I was family, so I asked not to be put in a position. That's why only a few trusted people in the company knew I was the president couple's brother. Then one day, my brother-in-law was diagnosed with a serious illness. His surgery was necessary, but unfortunately, his physical strength was waning in his 50s. Unable to fully function as president, he decided it was unfair to the employees to continue. So, he stepped back to become chairman, and a replacement was needed. I was the one chosen for the position of the new president. You're taking over for my husband. I remember spitting out my drink when my sister suddenly told me this during a drinking session. Wait, hold on, there must be someone more capable in the company. With my husband's condition and my upcoming business, I need someone I can trust to kick into gear. Though she put it roughly, I knew she recognized my abilities. I chuckled at her transparent attempt to hide her feelings and scratched my head. I'm no match for my sister, am I? With Sarah involved, I had to put in a nail before anything bad happened. That's why my appointment as the new president was decided. My brother-in-law felt the same as my sister, humbly suggesting that if they were to entrust the company they started together to someone, it had to be me. Ever since we first met, I felt you had a similar aura to me. You may hold a lower position, but you have real talent. Please, take this on. Unable to refuse under such circumstances, I resolved to become the new president. This was communicated only to the executives, and those who didn't know I was their brother were surprised. But, having been informed by my sister and brother-in-law, they accepted my new role as president. However, John had no way of knowing this. Even if I told him the truth, he would have dismissed it as a lie, so I didn't think it mattered much. This party was meant to officially announce me, a family member of the former president, as the new president, and to celebrate the full recovery of my brother-in-law. But since the new president was turned away, the plan was disrupted, and instead, it became a place to denounce John. Especially as my brother-in-law, who was just recovering from illness, was not fully aware of the situation and became even angrier. While on the phone with John, I opened my messaging app and saw a text from my sister, "Come back immediately." I got up and left the room. I had booked a hotel near the company, so I ordered room service coffee in my room. Therefore, I was able to return to the venue immediately. I had to go right away, or else not only John, but also I might be reprimanded. Sorry to keep you waiting. As I entered the venue, everyone's eyes were on me. It was my first time receiving so much attention. Somewhat nervously, I headed towards my sister. "Phew, you're here, so what about this fool?" There were my sister, smiling frighteningly, and my brother-in-law, with an angry expression. John was trembling like a frightened deer. "Wait, this is a joke, right? Someone incompetent like George can't be the new president. What are you saying? He's our brother." But he is. How dare you refer to the new president like that? My brother-in-law's angry shouts echoed through the venue. Despite having been ill just a while ago, his anger was impressive. That's when John finally apologized to me. I'm sorry. His apology might have been due to his confusion, but it didn't seem sincere. Above all, his eyes remained glaring at me. No need for apologies. I have no intention of forgiving you. Without looking at John, who was offering an apology, I responded and then smiled at my sister and her husband. Sorry, guys. Don't worry about it. As the new president, you need to establish authority. So, President, what will you do with John? It seemed my sister and brother-in-law were giving me a chance to say something to John before they made their decision. I nodded with a smile and turned to John. John, I have a lot to say to you. Of course, I was angry about being called an incompetent with low education. I paused for a moment before continuing. But what angers me most is your attempt to involve my daughter. At this, the room buzzed, and everyone looked at John with disdain. Many attendees had daughters of their own age, so they likely understood my feelings. John's face turned pale as he looked around frantically. No, it's not like that, I mean. So, what do you mean? I heard you said you'd train her into a good woman. No, it's impossible for a man in his late 30s like you to get my lovely niece. John stammered as my sister confronted him. Oh, and George isn't a high school graduate. What? That's right. We should clear that up too. Yes, contrary to what John had been insulting me with, I'm not a high school graduate. I did go to high school here, but for college, I went abroad. Abroad? But you said you weren't a college graduate. That was just your misunderstanding. You were harping on about some universities, but I didn't think telling you the truth would make any difference. You could have easily found out about my brother's background with a little research. How careless. John's eyes widened at my words. My sisters thought it was important for me to study business abroad, so they sent me to an overseas university right after high school. Well, I don't boast about my education like someone I know. That's impossible, you being uneducated. Really, you just don't get it. Didn't you want to know I wasn't uneducated? At my question, John bit his lip. Then, my brother-in-law stepped forward. We will consider this matter thoroughly. Don't expect to work as you have been until now. At his words, John's shoulders slumped. Then, George, as the new president, could you give a speech? Of course. I gave my speech as the new president in front of everyone and left. Opening the door at home, my beloved wife and daughter were waiting. Welcome back. Congratulations on becoming president. Dad, I'm glad you worked so hard. Thank you. I had a lot of delicious food at the party, but nothing beats my wife's home cooking and the beer poured by my daughter. Feeling happy, I remembered the past. I started having special feelings for Jessica during high school. I was struggling with the prospect of exams. I aspired to study economics and management, admiring my sister and brother-in-law. You should do what you love. My sister always told me, but I was determined in my decision. However, feeling burdened when my brother-in-law and sister offered to pay for my education abroad, I felt like I was relying too much on them. That's why I thought I should work and save money before going abroad, so I discussed it with Jessica. I'm always too dependent, aren't I? Not at all, you're amazing. But always relying on my sister and brother-in-law. Then Jessica took my hands and looked straight into my eyes. That's not true. Going abroad will give you the chance to acquire skills different from your sister and brother-in-law. Don't be modest. I wish I could protect my sister someday. Don't worry. First, let's meet the expectations of your sister and brother-in-law. Jessica was the one who comforted and supported me when I felt hesitant and unsure. She always gave me kind words, and gradually, she became a very special person to me. Encouraged by Jessica and my siblings, I decided to go to a university abroad. But going abroad meant making her wait. When I told her to find her own happiness, she slapped me. Idiot. Do I look like that kind of woman to you? I'll wait for you until you come back, and don't you dare cheat." She stayed in touch, supporting me during I was in abroad. The university abroad was totally different from the universities here. I pulled many all-nighters and struggled to gain skills abroad before returning home. "Welcome back." Those were Jessica's words when I proposed to her, and we happily got married. Then she gave birth to our daughter, Sarah. "Thank you, Jessica." "For what?" Suddenly. "For talking to my sister. It helped me get back at him. So, of course, I can't tolerate anyone hurting you and our daughter," Jessica said with a smile. After the party, I decided to tell Jessica and Sarah about the ordeal since I had worried them. "That old man was after me. Yo, gross. I can believe it. You got him good." They were both shaking with anger. "But Dad, you still protected me even though it put you in a bad spot, right?" "Thank you." Sarah thanked me. "I might be the new president, but my brother-in-law still has more authority due to handover work." When I went to the department where I had worked, John wasn't there. It seemed John really wasn't capable at his job. Looking at his computer, there were only signs of him surfing the internet. Above all, I was appalled to find that he had been reading pirated comics. I was shocked at his lack of morals. Ironically, this led to the implementation of stricter security software, which might be something to be thankful for. I decided to ask my brother-in-law about John's situation. John was originally in another company but got himself into trouble by pushing work onto subordinates, stealing credit, and causing problems with women. He had an affair with a co-worker, which was discovered by her husband, leading to a scandal and his inability to stay at his previous company. He left under the guise of voluntary resignation and applied to our company's mid-career recruitment program. My brother-in-law usually attends interviews but was absent due to illness at that time, so John's past wasn't fully vetted. Because of this, it seems the information about John wasn't properly communicated. An excellent man like me would naturally be headhunted by this company. I came here on my own accord, even though the former president tried to retain me. John boasted like that, but it was all lies, which was a letdown to learn. When my brother-in-law inquired about John's previous company, almost only negative things came up. They said, him being good is just absurd. Frankly, we were overjoyed when he left. It's rare for someone to be spoken about in such terms. In the end, my brother-in-law didn't immediately fire John but decided to transfer him to a branch office. That meant he was now under my sister's jurisdiction, but the place John was assigned to was filled with highly educated people. John, with his so-called high education, couldn't get by there and, having always pushed his work onto others, lacked experience, and was constantly getting criticized. "Hey, John is not coming anymore. Hooray." Seeing the juniors cheering made me realize how much trouble I had caused them. However, it was only a matter of time before John would resign. I am highly educated. Even with his boasting, his new assignment was meaningless. So what? In that sense, I graduated from a top university. I studied in abroad. I don't boast about it, but can you please get to work? I'm your supervisor who you look down on as just a high school graduate. But in this company, if you work hard and gain experience, you're valued. Education doesn't matter here. Days of getting such responses and the news about him targeting my daughter leaking out made it unbearable for him. If colleagues and superiors didn't work out, he started hitting on women with lower education than him. "Hey, if you date me, I'll help you with your work. Just be nice to me." The day he made such an advance, he was immediately called out by everyone. "What? That's not okay in this day and age. I'll sue you." Also, it's creepy for an older man like you to ask me out. John faced angry reactions every time he tried to approach the female employees. Eventually cornered, John started missing work without notice, and finally, a resignation letter was mailed to the branch office. He couldn't endure it anymore. His previous ways didn't work, and being ignored and logically defeated was too much for him. Putting someone who only boasts about their education in a place full of highly educated people is the best. They self-destruct on their own. My sister's strategy was impressive. That's how John was successfully ousted from the company. A few months later, during a family dinner, we were walking home when I saw a man with greasy, unkempt hair and shabby clothes. His eyes were bloodshot, and I almost looked away, but then I noticed he was muttering something. "It's all your fault. Because of you all." Wondering what he meant, my sister suddenly exclaimed, "Ah, John." Yes, it was John. I didn't recognize him at first because his appearance had completely changed, but it was John. He must have had a tough time since leaving the job. He had aged so much that he looked more like an old man than me. Feeling an ominous premonition from his clearly unwell state, he suddenly shouted, "It's all because of you. You ruined my life." Then he lunged at my sister, who was leading the way. Instinctively, I stepped forward, grabbed John's arm, and threw him over my shoulder with a classic wrestling move. It was a moment where the skills my sister had drilled into me came in handy. As I looked down, John was writhing in pain and unconscious. I was glad to have protected my family, but using my skills on a civilian could hurt them a lot, so I was sweating internally. The police were called later, but my sister and witnesses explained the situation, and it was deemed self-defense against a grudge. "You did well. Thank you." I felt relieved and confident that I could protect my sister and her family. Jessica was worried about me, but Sarah was excited, cheering, "Good job, Dad." Upon checking with the police later, it turned out that John had caused other problems as well, leading to him receiving a prison sentence. To prevent anything like that from happening again, I moved to a more secure house. With hard work and sweat, Sarah got accepted into a university. Indeed, it was a tough path due to the university being at the forefront, but I'm truly glad that my daughter's efforts were rewarded. While embracing my weeping daughter, we all rejoiced. Then, Sarah was set to leave home for university. We will miss Sarah. Yes, but it's a joyous beginning for her. Let's wholeheartedly celebrate. That's true. Though it felt lonely to have one less light in the house, we sent off Sarah, who was waving from the train with a radiant smile. Now, I must firmly take on my role as the new president. I am grateful to my strict sister, my kind brother-in-law, Jessica, who supports me wholeheartedly, and my daughter Sarah, more precious than life itself. I am reminded to be thankful for all the people who have supported me and made me who I am today.